think there was I don't know if it was a Drake song, but I think it might have been a Drake song that was released on YouTube, and like within like half of a day it had like 5 million views in the song. I never heard it, but the song was apparently amazing. got
Doesn't
taken
take
down.
much to create a Drake hit, I guess. Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Lines, the only podcast purifying the sports betting industry. How do we do it? Well, we talk about the sports books and their practices and how they affect you, an average recreational bettor, or maybe you're a pro sports bettor. Remember to like, download, subscribe, follow us on all the socials at InPlay Live. And if you want to see what InPlay Live is all about behind the scenes, we got a promo code for you that is Behind the Lines, all caps. I'm your host, Shane Mercer. That guy over there, Andrew Pace, the founder of InPlay Live, back with us as per usual. Pace, how are you doing?
Doing great, buddy. How about you?
Hey, I'm doing well. We've got a jam-packed show for our audience out there, all of our listeners and all of our viewers. This is one where we're going to have a few screen grabs for you and some things to share, so you may want to watch it. But if you can't, hey, you can still listen in, and you'll be able to get everything out of it that you need to. We got a lot coming at you on the show today. We're going to talk about AI a little bit later. We've got YouTube's broadcast that has made some major changes, Pace, that I know you experimented with over the weekend here. We've got a couple of shady things we're seeing from the books that we want to dive into. But before we do that, Pace, I want to rip off some numbers for you just to give you a sense of how things are growing and how fast they're growing in the sports betting world. Some stats from November that I saw this morning. Maine, that's the state of Maine, bettors wagered $40 million in November in the opening month of legal mobile sports betting. So Maine hitting the ground running with this first legalized full month that they had. Maryland set its own state record with 3 million wagered, a record for that state in the month of November. But here's the big one. The state of New York set a massive record in November, 2.11 billion in handle just in the month of November. Pretty wild, eh?
Did you say 3 million in Maine?
In Maryland.
In
Maryland in November. Yeah, it was a record for that state, but that state's still fairly new to the mobile sports betting world.
Isn't it weird to think that just one of the players at InPlay Live has more handle than the whole state?
Exactly right. I mean, who knows how long?
All of us?
Who knows how long that'll last? But a pretty small number. And it's funny, right? You see. That was Maryland actually with the 3 million. Maine had 40 million. So you think, hey, I think Maryland's bigger than Maine. I don't really know my U.S. geography all that well, but it doesn't quite add up there. But New York, I mean, come on, 2.1 billion, just nuts.
Well, I think with some of these newer legalized states, obviously New York's been around now for a little bit, and New York's New York. It's one of one. But they might only have like they're legalized now, but they might only have like a local government book or something like that. So they're still getting probably millions and millions of dollars that are being wagered through offshore channels. Whereas like New York that has, the DraftKings, FanDuel's, MGMs, all the legalized action. They're obviously and obviously a massive sports state. Like New York's New York, massive city, massive state, all that kind of stuff. But they're also a massive sports following. Right, original six with hockey, multiple sports teams for all the major leagues. Yeah, you're gonna see some bets, obviously.
Yeah, you'll see some bets, and you've got a lot of people in especially in the city of New York that have a lot of money to throw around. So no surprise there. All right. Just wanted to throw those at you to sort of kick things off, but I want to get into some of the shady things that we're seeing from the sports books. And let's start off with FanDuel. This comes from one of our members over the weekend. In fact, I think it was last night. We're recording on Monday. This is from the Sunday Nighter, and I'll just do a quick screen share with you to give everybody an idea of exactly what it is we're talking about here. So on FanDuel, this was a player prop. Here it is. Okay, so on FanDuel, rushing prop, Dak Prescott over 10.5 rushing yards. But you can see there, he already has 11. So they're giving you the over 10.5 at plus money, plus 112. So that would be 2.12 in decimal odds. He's already surpassed that number. And this is being offered very late in the game. So Pace, tell us why this is a terrible bet.
Okay. So this is being offered at a time, typically speaking, where no other sports book is offering player props at all, right? Now they've got other props open as well, which I think is a good thing because it's not just Dak's rushing yards. If it was just Dak's rushing yards, it would be really, really bad. So if you guys are listening and not watching, it's just your typical player prop betting menu. But it's just offered at a time where the rest of the books have closed these markets. Now, if you're looking at this information, you're watching the game, whichever the case, you go to the score, you go to ESPN, you see Dak Prescott has 11 rushing yards and he's being offered plus money to cover the rushing yards that he's already covering. This is a trap being laid by FanDuel. So much so that I think that if you wagered on the under, you might lose your account. And the reason for this is because in the vast majority of situations, the winning quarterback will be taking knees at the end of the game, which count towards his rushing yards. So there's been times where Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, I've seen them take knees out of the shotgun, so they'll actually lose as many as 5 or 6 yards on one kneel, and quarterbacks might need to kneel 3 times. We have seen quarterbacks kneel 4 times, where they kneel on fourth down where there's still a running clock. And the reason why they kneel on fourth down is they'll hold the ball for as long as they can, try to get the clock as close to 0 or to 0 in that play, and then take that final knee. So there's a chance that you're going to see 4 knees, but more typically anywhere from 1 to 3 kneels. That will put that total under. So that is there specifically for an inexperienced bettor to go all in on the over. And FanDuel's comfortable with the risk of if there's scenarios where the winning team, he doesn't end up kneeling out, and the bet will in fact win, which is what actually happened in this case last night, because the Eagles ended the game with the ball. But even with 1 second on the clock, Dak has to come out and take that knee and go under that rushing total. So yeah, it's a trap. It's there to exploit people getting really excited about finding a quote unquote bad line and then getting absolutely smoked from having bet it. And like I said, in the cases where they pay it out because they didn't end up kneeling, they are more than happy because they've trapped you for the next one, where they go, I am now going to start looking for quarterbacks rushing yards when they're already covering. It paid out in the Cowboys Eagles Sunday Night Football. I can't believe it. I doubled my account balance. And then before you know it, you will lose everything.
Yeah, you're gonna lose if more often than not, we're gonna end up in that Neil situation, and you're gonna lose the over. Um, but if you take the under, then you're also identifying yourself, right, as a sharp better to the sports book. It probably won't be long before you're limited, right?
Right. So and that's where, like, is it fairly handicapped for Niels or not? I have no idea. But if it is fairly handicapped for Niels, then maybe you wouldn't get flagged for it. If it is not and it's there just to trap you, yes, you will get rocked and shut down, maybe just for betting even a buck on it. They might take it where anyone that hits that under and wins, they just wipe all the accounts right away because they're like, you are on to what we're doing and we won't let you do it again. Whereas on the overside, they are like, keep betting with us. We're excited for the future with you.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, you look at something like this, and it's really just a lose-lose scenario here, right? Which is what the books want to create, right? Opportunities for the player to lose and lose again in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think just for anyone, the lesson here would be, if you are betting on something that you think is a broken line or some sort of palper error posted by the sports books, they do happen, they do exist. When you get the opportunity to bet on them, oftentimes if they do pay out, you lose your account and you have to decide whether or not it was worth it to wager on that line. If they don't pay out, you'll oftentimes still lose your account because they do not want your business if that's how you're playing. So you really have to ask yourself, and then the third is it's not actually a broken line and you just took significant risk, right? So you really have to ask yourself the question, do I want to bet on this? Are the books, setting a trap? And if you did catch the books off guard, is it worth it? And my answer to those questions, I would say, I don't want to say 99% of the time. I would say about 95% of the time are no's across the board. It is not worth it. Just ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the great thing about, if you come across a line like that, when you're part of a group like in Play Live and you're betting with a group of people, you can bring it to the group and say, hey guys, I'm seeing this. What do you think about it? Which is what happened last night. And I think, you advised that individual perhaps not to place that wager. So it's always, great to have the group as sort of a resource, a place to come to and kind of feel things out a little bit when you see sort of wagers that maybe don't look totally right to you. Okay, you brought up something else there, and we were talking about getting your account closed and getting cooked and getting limited, and it's something we talk about a lot on this podcast in terms of getting limited. But a whole bunch of us members and likely people who aren't members uh, have gotten another email today that goes beyond getting limited. So I'm going to share it with all of you right now, and this one comes from Bet365, and a buddy of mine alerted me to the fact that he got it this morning. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. Why would they do that? And then sure enough, a few hours later, there it was sitting for me in my inbox. And so just pulling that up here for you now. And I'll read it to you as soon as we got it here. But this comes from Bet365, which is the very first sports book that I got limited on. And that was about a little over a year ago now, when I got limited on Bet365, and limited to the point where I could no longer bet more than a dollar, in some cases 25 cents. And so I had about 31 cents in my Bet365 account. It's still the sports book that I use the most often, because even though I'm not betting on Bet365, I'm using it to track games, to track events, to watch games sometimes, because they'll show the broadcast on Bet365, and it is the sports book I have open the most. And so to get this email today, I am a little bit frustrated, quite annoyed, and thinking about what am I going to do next. So here it is. You can see it here on the screen. Dear Mr. Mercer, due to the nature of your business, my business, a decision has been made to close your account with immediate effect. Any existing unsettled bets will remain open on your account and will be settled in the normal way. If you then require a withdrawal of any remaining balance once all bets have been settled, please contact our customer services team who will assist you with this. Well, I can't even log into my Bet365 now, so that would make it very difficult to contact their customer services team. But I don't think they have any interest in helping me with any of this. Like I said, I haven't bet on Bet365 in over a year, but I have been using it almost every day, or at least every day that I'm betting on sports, to track games. So I know many people are getting this email today. Pace, are you surprised by this at all? I never thought that they would just completely shut down my account. At the same time, I think I kind of get it, right? Here I am using their product all the time, never placing any wagers, never contributing any financial, not giving them any kind of financial incentive to keep me as a user. But here I am using their product and taking advantage of it. So, I mean, am I totally, unsurprised by it or totally surprised by it? I guess maybe not. But at the same time, it's gone on for so long. I thought that this was just how they rolled.
Yeah, Bet365, man, scum of the earth. It's all I can really say. I like to look at different angles of things, Shane. So when I see this, I think, okay, you've closed my account. You go try to log in, and it says your details can't be recognized. So I just kind of wonder how long before we try to make another one.
Well, I had the same idea and I was almost about to go make it. And I was like, you know what? Let me sit with this for a little bit here. They're obviously doing this to a lot of people because we've got other people in the community that have had this happen to them, and they're all sharing it. And I thought maybe it's best if I just wait a little bit. I know I was going to be talking to you, and I'm like, let's see what Pace thinks about it.
Yeah, I would not try to make a new account right now. Or yeah, I mean, maybe you could where you don't verify and, you deposit a little bit of money in there and you don't use it to bet with. You could try doing something like that. And for anyone listening that's not a member of In Play Live, like this one's something that is pretty near and dear to our hearts, and it's just using 365 to organize games, to follow games, to watch games, all that kind of stuff. So if this has happened to you, I wouldn't panic or freak out about it. I wouldn't worry about it. um, there's always another account that can be made, especially if they allow access to those products with a small deposit and no verification. So yeah, I just personally wouldn't worry about it too much. And then yeah, like I said, there might be some upside. Maybe there is a time where those accounts can be used again. Like not again, but an account can be made because they deleted this one. And then the last thing would be like go to the regulator and just say why am I being discriminated against? Like what practices allow them to just do this, and see what they say. They probably won't support you, but I think that the more you pile up in these spots, take 5 minutes out of your day and fill out the form. For your local regulator about, so regarding what they've done. I think that's worthwhile for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Hey, maybe I should just for me, I'm in Ontario, so iGaming is the organization I email. It's the regulator, um, and I was thinking about it, and because I've gone through this process before, well, I know what their email to me back, which will probably come in about a week or week and a half after I email them, is do you have a complaint number? We can't do anything with you until you have a complaint number, and to get a complaint number you've got to talk to bet365, and you've got to go through their customer service team, and they never want to hand out complaint numbers because they know that that's used against them. And so it's a whole thing. But it might still be worth it, just to, like you said, just throw it on the radar, tell iGaming this happened. Maybe they don't do anything about it, but you know at least they've been made aware of it, right?
The other thing that you can do with that though, Shane, is forget about iGaming, just the regulator in general. Use the reference ID from that email as the complaint number, just because then there at least is information that can be pointed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, relating to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I'm also wondering too about maybe I wait a little bit, wait a week, wait a little, and open up another account with a different email address or something like that, right? Not for betting, of course, but just like you said, maybe you make a small deposit or something, and they'll let you keep it open, maybe even for another year. It might be worth it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Okay. Uh, let's talk about watching games because that's one of the big things that I've been using Bet365 for, especially this past NFL season, because they've been broadcasting the NFL games on Bet365, which has been amazing for me to be able to one watch certain games that I don't have on my TV. Because usually I'm getting 3 or 4 games a week, or a slate on the busy sort of NFL Sunday slate, the first slate of games. I got maybe 4 games or so. Same thing in the 4 o'clock window, maybe 2 or 3 games. So I can go and tune into all the other games, or have been able to tune into the other games on Bet365. But Pace, you've been watching on YouTube TV, and they've got NFL rights. They've got the Sunday ticket, and the season started off a little bit rocky with YouTube, to say the least. I think, Pace, it wasn't very good in terms of latency, and in fact, it was almost worse than regular TV. And it looks like they've taken some steps to correct it. So you tried it out this weekend. Tell me, how did it go?
Yeah, well, I think it's just really good news to see that they're doing something. I mean, if we follow our conversation, we're dating back 9 months on this podcast where it's like, hey, YouTube's won the rights to the NFL Sunday ticket, and we at In Play Live were unhappy about that, right? Because we know how good the Amazon Prime product
Hmm.
is for NFL. So when YouTube TV won, we were sitting there thinking like, well, are they going to improve it? And then they promised a really top tier product for the NFL. And then sure enough, the NFL starts and it's a disaster. It's just the typical latent YouTube TV product. And you could see that they were hurting truly, because a lot of people canceled their subscriptions and got refunds. We saw that with members of In Play Live. And then they started a marketing campaign, probably 4 or 5 weeks into the NFL season, where I think they're pretty disappointed with their overall subscription base to the Sunday ticket, offering it at discounts, and that continued and continued and continued, and I was getting bombarded with that marketing, and then all of a sudden you see try this low latency product available on the YouTube TV screen. It speeds up the game, I think, by approximately 12 seconds. So I would compare it now to a poor coaxial feed, which is kind of similar to what Bet365 would have been offering. The quality of the video is great. So like when you bring up a Bet365 feed and you expand it onto say like a TV, or any sportsbook feed for that matter, it's good, but it's pixelated and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. So YouTube TV has begun the journey of offering a low latency product. Now, I use YouTube TV. I use it for college football. And the reason why I use it for college football, specifically being in Canada, is because that's how I can watch the games that are out of market. I
Hmm.
don't have an alternative here. There is a college football package upgrade that's available for some people's broadcasts. And I think if you're in Ontario, you can actually get a decent college football feed. But here in Vancouver, I got the college football upgrade package, and it's like 2 minutes latent. It is so bad. It's unbelievable. Um, so for me, the 12 extra seconds on YouTube TV means that I'm getting decent coaxial feeds on college football. Does that matter as we head into bowl season? Not so much, but for next year, that's really, really, really good news. And I think just the whole landscape, from the standpoint of watching sports, cutting the cable, low latency versus this IPTV, really latent feeds, it's just good to see it all heading in the right direction. So like BetVision, or BetGenius, BetVision, Amazon Prime, now yes, YouTube TV getting a little bit quicker. The sports books offering decent feeds. It is tremendous news. It really is. Um, the beauty of football is that you have one play and then there's a play clock. And in between that play clock, there's time before that next play occurs, which means that as long as your feed is at, let's call it like this sort of bad coaxial level, which is typically about from what happened on the field in real time to you watching it, let's call that 20 to 30 seconds versus say the YouTube TV typical product, which is going to be, another 12, 15 seconds on top of that. You are seeing the play before the next play has occurred in most occurrences. From a betting standpoint, that allows you to process the information in the time frame that's actually happening in the game, because a new play hasn't occurred as you're seeing it and making your decision. So that is powerful. For something like the NBA, this doesn't help. Like you might have 9 points in 10 seconds in the NBA in some points where you see pull up threes on 3 or 4 possessions in a row. So for the NBA, or basketball in general, you still, good feeds almost don't exist. Because even 15 seconds latent is not good for basketball. But for football and for baseball, it's good news.
Yeah, 15 seconds in basketball, you could get three threes drained in that amount of time, and a hack maybe too to go in there. It's like you could literally get over 10 points in that 15 seconds. It's not a stretch to think that that could happen. So yeah, it's going to be hard to get something that's a little latent for NBA. But I think, like you said, it sounds like we're trending in the right direction. And we opened up this show too with those stats and the staggering numbers, especially being wagered in the various states as they open up and that kind of thing. And as you get more sports bettors looking for low latent feeds, that pressure is going to be on the big broadcast providers to deliver to deliver something in as real time as possible. So absolutely positive to see it trending in that direction, which is just a fantastic. Um, okay, on this topic of technological advancements. This is something that caught my eye today, and it's kind of interesting to think. But I think we're already kind of there. But let me give it to you. So the headline. This is a headline in a Globe and Mail article that came out over the weekend. First, AI came for Sports Illustrated. Soon, it will want to give you sports betting advice. So, for everyone out there who's not familiar, Sports Illustrated came under heavy criticism about a month ago or so because it was using AI in a lot of its content. And it wasn't telling anyone that it was using AI in its content. On top of it, it was assigning that content to writers who didn't actually exist. So it was written by, John Smith, and here's a picture of John Smith, and here's the article that we claim John Smith wrote, but all of it was AI generated. The name, the photo, the content itself, all created by AI, and so Sports Illustrated came under heavy criticism for that. And so, it had to, play the whole PR game about, well, we're using it here and we're not using it in these situations, and we're still working it all out, and we're experimenting and blah 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 blah. But it got me thinking, hey, wait a minute though. What if we start getting a whole bunch of AI tipsters? We talk a lot about tipsters on this show, and most of them, I think, up until now, have been actual people, real people out there for the most part, who are trying to get you to pay for picks that are usually pretty bad picks and pretty terrible picks. But we could start to see a lot more of this AI sports betting advice. I know, myself, for example, one sort of thing that I've looked at, you see models, right? And oh, we've run simulations. There's certain sites that we've run simulations on this game, and we've run computer generated simulations 10,000 times on Monday Night Football, and here's this predicted score from our computer generated simulations. So we kind of have seen some of this already. But Pace, what do you think about the idea of maybe something popping up in your Instagram feed from a tipster telling you, here's the best bet of the day, but really it's all AI. The tipster himself doesn't exist. The name isn't real, but here's something to bet on.
Yeah, I mean it's already happening, and I think that we're in a world right now where it is just the beginning, in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, and there's a lot of fears and a lot of industries associated with it. I think obviously we saw the writers' strike in Hollywood,
Hmm.
relating to AI and, name, image, and likeness, relating to that. And I think there was, I don't know if it was a Drake song, but I think it might have been a Drake song that was released on YouTube, and like within like half of a day, it had like 5 million views, in the song. I never heard it, but the song was apparently amazing. It got
Doesn't
taken
take
down.
much to create a Drake hit, I guess.
Well, the point is that it's powerful. Like you
Yeah.
can create, entire films, entire art of any kind, from music to paintings to yeah, entertainment, pretty quickly with AI, and there's a lot of upside to that, obviously. And then obviously the flip side is the fears associated with it. That can be from job loss all the way up to what's the show called, Westworld, um,
Right.
Westworld,
Yeah,
Westworld.
Westworld. Yeah, with the robots, that look like
Yeah,
humans, and yeah, yeah.
yeah, and a million different sci-fi films, in the last 50 years. But then, obviously that becoming some sort of legitimate fear. I think with the betting space specifically, there's two sides to it, right? It's just like anything else that we do or follow. The first side is the sports books and how they're using AI to now limit players. Why do you think that they're limiting quicker on these sports books? How do you think they know so quickly?
Hmm.
It's because a human being isn't going in and reviewing your account. It's the pattern was immediately identified by, some sort of, AI, pattern that they've established and are looking for. So there's that side of it. Then there's the side of it of the lines being set themselves. So you can have sharper lines, in theory, by the use of AI, and that can be anything from like, a player acquisition like Shohei Otani. going to the Dodgers, where the lines are not vulnerable for this 5 minute window, where a lot of bettors look for news to place futures, to um, uh, place bets on a game based on an injury of a player who is or is not playing, and you can catch some real value doing that kind of stuff. Well, AI will and already has the power to ensure that no one got that information quicker than the AI service did, and potentially is able to, close lines or change lines quicker, and just make the sports book sharper overall, right? So that's the one side of it. The other side of it, I don't really think too much about like tipsters and things like that, like kind of what you touched on there. It is already happening. It's been happening for a long time. Like whether it's AI or some sort of computer model or whatever the case may be, spreadsheets, all of that is leading towards data and information. I think it's just more readily accessible, more readily organizable, which gives the better power, provided that that does have an edge of some kind on the algorithm or the sports books. And the way sports betting works, I don't believe is going to change anytime soon or ever. And that is that if the public likes a line, if they think the Chiefs are going to win tonight, that line is going to move in some capacity based on the way that the money is coming in on that line. And that means that lines need to be balanced with sharp action. So as much as AI has a role in all of that, there's still going to be opportunities to profit. Uh, Now, does that give us more power as bettors, knowing that that process is still going to occur, but now we have more data and information? That I don't know the answer to, and we have seen, obviously, sports books limit quicker and make things more challenging in some ways, but at the same time, it's not like there isn't still money to be made, right? So yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I'm excited for where it's going to go from the standpoint of just pure curiosity and potential information. But yeah, it really is just the beginning. Tipsters popping up on Instagram where it's not even a human being, and it's them giving you a pick. Um, uh, how is that any different than anyone else giving us a pick? There's still going to
Mhm.
be a human being somewhere that's profiting off of that if you're paying for it. So
Yeah, that's a good point. There's always going to be a human profiting off of the technology, regardless of how you're interacting with it. I'll also mention I really appreciate you bringing up Otani as a Toronto Blue Jays fan. Pace, thanks for bringing that topic up. Yeah, but I think you're absolutely right that there's always going to be um, that person behind the AI, right? And then on top of that too, when us humans as the sports betters know what the AI is looking for, know what the algorithm is looking for, and how it's going to react to something. That's where we can find our edge, right? And there's always going to be that kind of back and forth, that sort of give and take with the technology, right? And it's almost to our benefit because if we know that the algorithm, that the AI is going to react one way, but that the humans who are playing the sports are going to do something different, um, then we're always going to have that little bit of an edge, right? Um,
Ye yeah, and also too, I will this is kind of hopeful thinking, so I wouldn't want anyone to rely on this, but it's kinda like the Bet365 thing that you just brought up. You can react and say, "Oh my god, what am I gonna do?" Or you could be like, "Okay, what are my next steps in managing this? Do I require this sports book in the way that I was using it? Um, and can I potentially get an account in my name again out of this?" I think the answer to that is no, but just throwing those types of things out, these sort of positive ways of approaching a problem solving, and solution oriented thinking towards it. Well, with AI, I look at like a lot of sports right now, and this really is almost every sport. And I think about legalized betting in the United States and that coming onto the scene in 2018, and a whole group of people within Play Live that were like really focusing on the end of NFL or the end of college football, because they were betting on games when people were shaking hands and walking on the field. So you might have like a minus 10,000 line that's still open on the money line, but they're shaking hands, the game's over, and you can still bet on something, right? And because of that obviously ending, which is like the most obvious and inevitable thing you could ever sort of fathom, you then start looking. We've talked about this before in our college basketball episode about new strategies that you can find off of something that you used to be doing. So maybe you find a sports book that's open in the NFL with 3 minutes left, and they've got a lot of different betting options still. And you look at it and you go, oh my God, like the probability of this happening is like, 1 in 50, and they're offering me like minus 200 on this team total under or over or whatever the case may be. And then you start picking apart some of these books in these different scenarios, but it was all built on, potentially just like a line that shouldn't have been there when teams were shaking hands. Well, maybe with AI, some of these sports books will actually start to open up lines that they're a little bit more confident in later in games across all sports. You see the ninth inning of baseball have far less offerings than any other inning, if not any at all. You see 5 minutes left in the NFL, like we were just touching on player props, where we said this shouldn't have been open and other books wouldn't have had it open. Well, they had it open for a reason, but you don't see these player props and all these other markets available at the end of an NFL game, a college football game. Um, watch the lines in an NHL game in the first period and what you can bet on versus 3 minutes left in the game. You'll open up your sports book and say, why can't I bet on this game anymore? Well, there's reasons for all of this, right? And I think to myself, can AI bring some of those markets and offerings back to make the books more competitive, giving sports bettors options, probably much sharper options, but options nonetheless, late in games. And that's something that could be just way out of line to say, but at the same time, it's wishful thinking in the area of the books getting sharper and then allowing this sort of betting activity in games.
One thing I'll also say is that, while it might seem like, we can't as a single human compete against the computing power of AI and, the massive big tech providers in the sports books, um, I don't know how much you've experimented with ChatGPT, but I've done some fair amount of experimenting with it in my career as a journalist and in the organization that I work for. It's being experimented with pretty widespread and not this isn't sort of something that's a secret or anything like that. It's all very out in the open, but it's being toyed with and it's happening at a lot of different media organizations as well. And so I'm seeing a lot of the content created by AI. And it's funny how we as humans can adapt to things so quickly because I can now read a piece of text. It doesn't matter who puts it in front of me or where it comes from. And I can tell instantly if it's been written by AI or not, if there's a human voice behind it or not. And it's so easily identifiable now. So it's as this kind of technology evolves, so will we as people, as humans, and our ability to kind of navigate it and sort of spot things that are wrong with it, because it becomes so easy to do. And it's funny how you know how we're trained that way, I guess, or kind of maybe how we are programmed that way to kind of recognize humanity in things and how easy that can become, um, to sort of know when it's not present.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's well said. There's always going to be scenarios where what is projected has flaws simply due to chaos, and you just never know what's going to happen in sports. And the more you try to become predictive, it doesn't mean that there isn't theoretical value. It just means that it will just never be correct or perfect in those circumstances that were projected, leaving opportunity,
Yeah.
potential opportunity, right?
It's a crazy world out there full of chaos, and we absolutely love it because we can find ways to capitalize on it. It's just great. All right, Pace. Well, I think that is a full show for everybody out there, for our audience, for our listeners. Remember to like, download, subscribe, and follow us on the socials at In Play Live. You want to see what life is all about on the inside? We've got that promo code for you, Behind the Lines. And Pace, I just want to tease something for our audience out there. Next week's episode, I think we're going to have a special guest. Fingers crossed. It should be a good one. So make sure you tune in for next week's episode. All right, Pace. Till then, buddy, keep eating those books.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join In Play Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.